Hello PAYS GB team leaders. This is just a short video to help hopefully answer some questions that you might have in regards to how to do mentoring with your team members. So just to let you know, so we're going to start with the flow. This is the flow template. You should be familiar with it. The experience bit seems to sometimes be an issue. So just to let you know, when you plan an experience with your team members, you should already know when that experience is scheduled for. So for example, let's say you guys are doing a mentoring session on early schools ministry, which is one of the pre-assigned mentoring sessions that you should be doing with them. So you're doing a mentoring session on early schools ministry. So you should know when you're doing that mentoring session that when the experience is going to happen. So you know when the experience is going to happen, you ask them to write down the goal for the experience, and then when you actually do the experience, you're having them write down the list of what you did and what they did. During the mentoring session is when you're then going to be going through these other steps. So you're going to be reviewing what you did and what they did. Then you're going to be moving on to the question it section. So what went well, what could have been better, how effective were those things, and that oftentimes might happen in the debrief of what you're doing. Ignore Louise, she's just wrapping presents in case you hear rustling behind you. They can't see you. She loves you guys and gave you a thumbs up, just so you're aware. So in your mentoring session, you're doing the question it section, the understand it section, and the multiply it section. That's where you then talk about the first mile, how if they were trying to achieve this goal again, how could they do it better? The extra mile section, which is the multiplying it section, okay, let's go do it bigger and better. And then the diverted mile section, how can we avoid the diverted mile? So section 2, 3, and 4 is what's happening in your first mentoring session that you have with the team. Now, some of you might be aware of this flow check sheet. This is a really good way to plan your mentoring sessions. So you as the person who are planning this event, you are looking at, have you taken them on an experience? Well, that should already be scheduled. Are they aware of the goal? Have you told them to write down 10 things in the columns? Doesn't necessarily have to be 10 things, but that might be a good thing to aim for. Then you're asking yourself when you're preparing team member mentoring, have you prepared your own list of what worked and what didn't? Have you prepared your principles and practices? And then have you thought through how they can multiply it? This last step, have you commissioned them to take the next step? This is where things come into your team leader reports. So I'm going to swap over to your team leader reports now. This again should be something that you guys are all familiar with. So you've just taken your team member Johnny on an experience for early schools ministry. Perhaps the goal was that Johnny's, that in his ministry, he made the ministry image driven, which is the I that's part of EPIC. Well, he did that really well. Let's say he was doing the application, which is the teaching bit, and he did it really well and included lots of images. So you can then move on from the first mile section to the extra mile section. How is he going to multiply it? Well, you've agreed at the end of your mentoring session that rather than just focusing on the image-driven aspect of it, he could include all 4 steps of EPIC, the experiential, participatory, image-driven, and community elements, all into what his next piece of ministry would be. Well, in week 2, so last week you had this conversation. In week 2, you are observing how is Johnny doing with putting all of the elements of EPIC into schools ministry. And you might be saying, well, he is doing really well in I and P, but needs to work more on making the ministry experiential. That's not how you spell that, just in case anyone's wondering. So he's doing really well in image-driven and participatory, but he needs to work more on making the ministry experiential. That is what you've observed through how he's doing with his next step. Now that might then go into other elements, so making Haverim epic, for instance. So maybe the next mentoring session you're going to be doing with him is on leading Haverim. Well, you can still take this principle of making ministry epic and apply it to then how is he leading Haverim, if that's something that you want to continue working on him with. But there might be something that is more important that would relate better to leading Haverim. I hope that makes sense in regards to what you're supposed to be filling in on your team member mentoring report and how to put the mentoring sessions into what you're doing. As most of you know, this is the Bury team midterm stats, but these are the mentoring sessions that you should be doing this term. The Because You Love experience, which you did at FT, SHAPE, early schools ministry, running Because You're Loved, leading Haverim, mentoring a young person, then doing solo ministry and term 1 appraisals. These are the mentoring sessions that you have to cover this term. If you guys are interested in where to find any of these resources, this is in the Team Member Resource Drive 2016-2017. You all have access to it because that's where you get your team leader reports from. Go into the Flow folder, and then that's where you have your check sheets, your templates, and then a couple of types of mentoring sessions outlines that you can use to help guide how to approach those mentoring sessions. So I hope this has been helpful for you guys. If you have any further questions, let me know, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.